Good morning, it's Melanie Waugh from Mindspring Psychology Centre. How'd you sleep last night? This week is the Sleep Health Foundation of Australia's Sleep Awareness Week, so I thought it might be helpful to just have a quick talk to you about a thing that we call sleep hygiene. Basically, it's about all of the things that you can do on a regular basis that will hopefully help you get a good night's sleep. Sleep is so important for mental health, for emotion regulation, for learning, and I mean, who hasn't had an experience of having a terrible night's sleep and feeling really rotten the next day? So I guess the more we can kind of get organised and be using some regular habits to help us sleep better, the happier we're going to feel, and the more we're going to be able to cope with the stuff that comes to us day to day. So the first thing that I think is really important is to try and stick to regular bedtimes and waking times. That helps our body get into a bit of a pattern. We get, our brain gets used to it, our body clock gets used to it, often means that it's much easier to get to sleep. And that regular bedtime includes the weekend. It's really good if you can't, if you can try and stick to something fairly regular. And I know I enjoy a bit of a sleep in on the weekends, but I still try to keep it fairly close to when I would normally get up, and try to keep my bedtimes fairly consistent as well. The other thing to think about is what's happening during the day and how that might contribute to whether you can get to sleep easily and whether you sleep well. So most people know that caffeine is something that for some people can make them feel very wide awake or disrupt their sleep. So, if you are someone who's particularly sensitive to caffeine, think about avoiding it, certainly in the second half of the day and particularly really towards bedtime. There are other things that we eat and drink that can disrupt sleep as well. So alcohol is another one, and often alcohol will help us get to sleep quickly, but then we'll have quite a disrupted sleep during the night. So it's one to avoid as well. Not eating heavy meals too close to bed and not exercising too close to bedtime are also really helpful in trying to manage your sleep and trying to get a good night's sleep. The other thing that's really important, and I think is increasingly difficult for people, is to try to have that no screen time in the lead up to bed. So no phones, no iPads, no tablets, no TV. And I know that there are some filters that you can put onto those devices that change the type of light that comes out of them, which I think makes a difference in terms of not triggering our pineal gland and making our brain think it's time to wake up. But the things that we watch on those can often be quite stimulating. So even if the light coming from them is not a problem, often the content and the things we're looking at might be things that kind of get us really worrying or thinking, and that's not always a great thing just as we're wanting to head off to sleep. So giving yourself maybe half an hour to an hour kind of break from that stuff before you head off to bed and try to go to sleep may be something that's helpful. The other thing is to try and keep your bedroom for sleeping and not to be doing daytime activities in there. So not watching TV in there, not, I guess hanging out in there. And I know for teenagers in particular, that's probably quite tricky because often they will be hanging out in there with their friends. They will be sometimes doing their homework on their beds and that sort of thing. But yeah, I guess as much as possible, try to keep it that space for sleeping. We want to have that association with it so that when we get to bed and put our heads down and turn off the light, our brain and our body kind of knows what we're there for, which is to go to sleep. Keep your room as quiet as you can. Sometimes that might mean that you need earplugs. Try to keep it dark. Try to keep it reasonably cool. When our body is cooler, it actually kind of sets some stuff in motion for us that helps us go to sleep. I guess because, normally we would be, or typically we would be starting to fall asleep as kind of the sun goes down if we weren't so governed by clocks and work schedules and stuff. And that drop in body temperature is actually one of the things that starts to tell our body and our brain it's time for sleep. The other thing that's really important, I think, is to not stay in bed for too long if you're really struggling to get to sleep. So the experts kind of recommend that you maybe give yourself half an hour at the most. If you're still lying there feeling really wired and wide awake, or you're really worrying about stuff, it's actually not a good thing to stay in bed. Firstly, I think it tends to make us feel more worried about not getting to sleep. But secondly, we start to get an association then between being in bed and being wide awake. And we don't want that association to be there. So the best thing to do is actually get up, go somewhere quiet, do something maybe quite boring. I used to read textbooks when I was studying and couldn't get to sleep. That really helped. Try to keep the lights low. Don't do anything too stimulating. Try to wait until you feel drowsy again. You could have a little snack, like maybe a banana or an apple or something, and then when you start to feel more drowsy, go and try again. And often that then means that you'll be able to get off to sleep. Sometimes people are really struggling with anxiety or lots of ruminating, lots of worries at night time. And I'll probably do a whole other video on some things that would be helpful for that. Of course, if our minds are really busy and racing and we can't stop thinking about what we didn't get done or what we have to do tomorrow, or that problem we have to solve, it can be really hard to switch off and wind down. So yeah, there's some things that can help with that. You know, ask me if you're coming in for a session, but I will try and get to another video on that, just some simple tips for, you know, possibly even just how to distract yourself in the first instance. That's not a long-term great solution, but it might be something that helps you at least get to sleep on those occasions where you really just can't switch off. Anyway, hope you have a fabulous day. I hope these little tips help and you get a good night's sleep tonight, and I'll talk to you again soon. Bye.